Morning, everyone. This is Bill Miles, and welcome to our weekly Teletown Hall. We're delighted to have each and every one of you with us again this morning. You know, it's been a tumultuous week for our nation. At yesterday's Hilton Head Island Town Council meeting, Councilman Mark Grant so eloquently talked about the changes that need to be made as a nation and as a community. And I want you to know that that conversation that needs to be had about race relations, that your Chamber of Commerce is committed to being part of those conversations. And remember to love your neighbor, and through love, we'll overcome hate. If we could, just for a moment, I'd like to pause for a moment of silence. Thank you. Good morning again. And I mentioned yesterday's Hilton Head Island Town Council. One other piece I'd like to mention about that meeting, kudos certainly went out to Town Manager Steve Riley. Steve announced on Monday, which just happened to be his 29th anniversary at the town, that he'll be retiring at the end of the year. And Steve's legacy on behalf of this town and certainly region has been extraordinary. And we look forward to what the next 6.5 months brings with Steve before his retirement. And Steve, congratulations on a job well done. We'll celebrate you and thank you in many more ways to come between now and the end of the year. But certainly couldn't let the moment pass without saying thank you. Want to update you on the next phase of our Path Forward plan. We'll be reconvening our groups starting today and running through next week. So our 9 task force groups will be reconvening and discussing what's been working, other changes that need to be made. Then we're also going to begin implementing a new phase, which will be a part of educating our visitors and our residents about the low country values and really how to respect and protect our environment, all the way from the Atlantic Ocean to the May River and all the waterways in between, and then so many other areas that we need to be conscious of. One exciting thing that we're doing this afternoon, we'll be having a discussion with the National Association about adopting the Hilton Head Island and Bluffton communities Path Forward plan, which they'll be looking at using in opening other parts of the country. That speaks volumes about the work that the 175 community volunteers, as well as the town of Hilton Head Island officials and the town of Bluffton officials, coming together and putting together just a quality plan that so many others are looking to as a model and looking to implement in their own communities. So thanks to all of you who have participated in that. If you would like more information on the Path Forward plan, go to our website, which is thepathforward.org. Or if you're interested and haven't gotten your seal yet and you'd like to participate with that, simply email pathforward@hiltonheadisland.org. Summer season is off to a positive start, we're glad to say. Certainly have come a long way in a couple of months. The Inn Club at Harbor Town opened last weekend. Palmetto Bluff is reopening tomorrow for guests. The Sonesta reopens this weekend. And Disney's Hilton Head Island Resort will be reopening on June the 15th. So we thought today we'd start out talking a little bit about tourism and to give us an overview of what travel and tourism looks like, not in a post-COVID world, but a post-quarantine world, is one of the travel industry's most well-regarded thought leaders. He's the president of leading PR firm Perception. Last year, he was honored as one of the 25 top minds in the travel industry. And he's overseen the public relation efforts for clients like the City of New Orleans, Peru, our national park systems, Singapore Airlines, and Royal Caribbean. He's renowned as one of the top crisis communication experts in the country and has worked on issues such as New Orleans post-Katrina, 9/11, the Miracle on the Hudson, cruise ship disasters, and more. So you can see he's the go-to call in a crisis. He was born and raised in New York and has a love for our destination, buying a second home here not too long ago, so he knows the area very well. I'm pleased to introduce to you this morning certainly a great friend of the Chamber of Commerce, and Renee Mack. Renee, welcome, and we're glad to have you on today. Thank you. Renee, we're going to unmute you. Just 1 minute there. We haven't gotten it unmuted. Just 1 second. I like seeing your smile today, and we'll have you unmuted in just a second. Try *6, Renee, and see if that unmutes you. Not yet. Not yet. I tell you what, Renee, we don't have you yet. What we're going to do while we try and connect you, I know our South Carolina Parks, Recreation, and Tourism Director, Dwayne Parrish, is with us. So Kelly Brunson will work with you on getting you unmuted. And Dwayne, thanks for being flexible. And we'll move on to you right now, and then we'll bounce back to Renee Mack.
Glad to, Bill. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Dwayne.
Good morning, and good morning, everyone. And thank you again for doing this call. It's always good to hear everybody's update of what's going on, and obviously a somewhat rapid changing market. So the latest on what's going on around the state. So as of yesterday, there are now 56 hotels that are closed throughout the state. That's down from 84 this time last week, and down from a high of 575 hotels. Statewide, hotel occupancy for the week ending May 23rd. May 23rd is a Saturday, and that's the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend, was 43.8% for the state, 37.1% for the Southeast, and 35.4% for the U.S. The highest night was Saturday night of Memorial Day. It's 63.6% occupancy. That number organically appears to be a lot higher on the coast, lower on the inland west of I-95. But nonetheless, these are positive numbers. This number has trended up, or these numbers have trended up each week now for the past 5 weeks. And we have, as a state, have led the country in the Southeast in occupancy for the last 5 weeks, or been ahead of them, excuse me. State parks had another busy weekend, obviously during Memorial Day weekend. While the weather was somewhat iffy, they were still very busy, but not as busy as prior weeks. Some of this we attribute due to many attractions that were allowed to open up that Friday. However, our campground and cabin occupancy for the weekend in parks was over 95%, which is a normal occupancy for Memorial Day weekend. In regard to the remaining entertainment venues that are still closed, a sample of some of those being theaters, bowling alleys, and racetracks, I would look for a press release sometime this week. We have now issued guidance on all of those, and hopefully the governor will have that information out soon. I'd like to read for you some of the latest from Longwood's company in regard to traveler sentiment and what they are thinking as of this point. So as of the beginning of this week, 47% of American travelers say the virus has greatly impacted their travel plans in the next 6 months. That's down from a peak of 67% on April 1st and the lowest it's been since mid-March. Almost half of American travelers are still planning their first trip since the pandemic within the next 6 weeks. Those American travelers who have plans to travel in the next 6 months is holding steady at 71%. And lastly, 40% of American travelers support opening up their communities to visitors. Our call to action for us at PRT, our call to action media plan started this past Monday with a messaging of "We're ready when you're ready." This included a series of commercials and video of signifying we're open, with our "Welcome to South Carolina" sign at the interstate borders, with someone placing hanging a sign at the bottom that says "Open." An empty beach that shows a lifeguard getting in the chair, putting his sunglasses on and getting ready for the day. It showed a park ranger putting paddles and life jackets inside of a canoe on a lake. And lastly, we had one that showed a room attendant with gloves and mask on, completing a hotel room, putting flowers on the table, and opening up the windows for, again, signifying it's ready. So I'm confident that started on Monday. I'm confident that will help us as we go forward. And we certainly hope to continue to lead to both the Southeast and the nation be ahead of them in occupancy as we move forward through the summer. And Bill, pending any questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dwayne. I appreciate that. We're looking between June 5 and June 11th with hotel occupancy estimated right now to be around 57, 58%. So putting that in perspective for our listeners today, that would be about 36,000 guests as opposed to about 51,000 guests this time last year when hotel occupancy would have been around 82%. We're seeing our home and villas doing a little bit better than that, and so a little higher occupancy with the home and villas. But Dwayne, thank you. We're glad that the state has initiated and implemented your program, and we look forward to following that and piggybacking off your leadership at the state. And thank you for being with us again this morning. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate all you do. Thank you. I think we're ready now to with Renee, and I'll remind everyone that he's the president of Perception. And Renee, I think we've got you. Sorry for the failure earlier, but welcome.
Well, thank you. Bill, I know you too well, so I think that was just one of your tests to see if I can handle a crisis and if I'm flappable or not. So I'll just roll with it. So what questions would you like to ask, or do you want me to just give a rundown?
Renee, I think it'd be good for you just for your overall 30,000-foot view. And I know you know Hilton Head Island well, and you're in New York and New Jersey now, and kind of what you're seeing is the future holds for travel and tourism.
Okay, well, I'm sure many of you know this, but this is mainly my personal view based on 30 way plus more years of experience. Everything you're seeing this year is clearly not normal. So I wouldn't measure your spring and your summer or even your fall at the moment against any other year. And I liked your intro, Bill. I don't call it post-COVID. I think that's kind of absurd because the virus is still around. Certainly it's around up here in New York and New Jersey, where I live. And it's more of a post-quarantine period. And I was down on Hilton Head for 3 weeks when the governor first started opening up the state. And it was really fascinating to watch as a professional because we have a little townhouse near Caligony Beach. And that has its positives and its other side to it. And what was fascinating is you immediately saw a regional drive market pour in looking for an escape, looking to get out and go to the beach. Then within the next week, you saw license plates that were not just from Georgia and North Carolina, but you started seeing plates from Tennessee and Louisiana and Kentucky. And by the third week, you were seeing plates from New York, New Jersey, Indiana, Ohio, and Texas. And I think that's what the future holds for the short-term future. You have a massive amount of the population coming out of quarantine, looking for a place to escape. It's going to be a drive market, and it's going to be driven on emotion. And I think that's what a lot of people and marketers seem to forget, that graduations, anniversaries, birthdays, all sorts of milestone moments, as I kind of refer to them as, have been postponed, have been put on hold, and families and friends are going to want to connect quickly to reestablish and observe those milestone moments. And Hilton Head is an ideal place for that. Plus, I know that we used to like to say a lot that you were America's first environmentally planned community, but you also may be one of America's first planned outdoor communities or destinations. Because everything I do when I go to Hilton Head is outdoors, whether it's the beach, whether it's walking to the Rita's custard stand, whether it's kayaking or zip lining or golfing or bike riding, making a declaration about what you are outdoors, and outdoors doesn't necessarily mean the wilderness. And I do work with many of the national parks west of the Mississippi. Not everyone wants wilderness, they just want to be outdoors. So I think you have a tremendous opportunity, having opened up earlier than most. Um, and I know this sounds kind of odd, but remember, you're speaking to someone from New York and New Jersey. And to put that into context, um, my family, I grew up in New York City. We did not own a car. 50% of my family to this day never had a driver's license. So the idea of driving more than 3 hours was crazy. So all of a sudden, people where I live in northern New Jersey now are frequently saying, I'm going to drive to South Carolina. I'm going to drive to Florida. I mean, no matter how you do it, that's a 12 or 14-hour haul straight through. So Hilton Head has a tremendous opportunity, I think, to basically take advantage of an enormous percent of the East Coast population that is coming out of quarantine and wants to go somewhere that's simple, that's in their comfort zone, that they can get out there into the world at their own level of comfort, at their own pace, and you provide the perfect place for that. And it's family driven, and it's couples driven, and it's friends driven. So it's not complicated. And right now, I think all of us would like something not complicated. Going to the grocery store up here is very complicated. Going to the buy low on Hilton Head is not complicated, trust me. So I think you have an opportunity not only to introduce an entire new audience that have heard of Hilton Head but may not know it to the destination. But dare I say this, you may attract a lot of people who flew over your destination or flew in other directions. Don't forget, in 5.5 hours on a good day, I can be in England. So that 11-hour drive is now something I will do because I need to go somewhere. You can attract a much more upscale audience, worldly audience, an audience that has, in many ways, has gone as far as they can on a plane or an adventure, and now are basically geographically limited. So I think Hilton Head has a huge opportunity almost to relaunch and create a renaissance of what the destination really is versus what it may be perceived as to many. And I don't think many destinations have that opportunity in their history. So.
Renee, thank you. And a couple things that got a couple questions for you. One is from Jim, and Jim is asking, once the release of cabin fever gets satisfied, how do you think that the shrinking of jobs and the economy will affect specifically domestic travel?
That's a great question. And, you know, if I knew all the answers, I'd be out at Aqueduct betting on some horse in the 5th race. But I would say this, and I think it is a great question. And I'm a focus group of one right now. I know a lot of people who did not lose their jobs, and I know a lot of people who have been furloughed or did lose their jobs. They all want to get out. The challenge is, as we start to open up and states open up, a lot of people are not, this is my opinion, going to walk into their boss's office or the company and say, I want a week off, after basically being at home for the last 10 weeks. So I think you're going to see a lot of vacation planning, pushed back, and a lot of planning is going to focus on what traditionally were not your highest seasons, probably. So we're talking the end of August, September, October, November, with the hopes that people are returning to work, returning to their jobs. There's a sense of comfort and normalcy, and they can actually take a week off and not worry about it. And I think there's enormous pent-up demand. I would say, again, one of the huge advantages you have going for you is people either have a decent amount of money right now because all they've been doing is buying groceries for the most part, and many of them have been getting checks. And people who are working haven't been allowed to go out and eat and shop for the most part. And gas is damn cheap. I mean, I think when I drove through North Carolina, a few weeks ago, it was $1.36. So that is almost inconceivable. So Hilton Head, presents itself, as you know, it can be wildly upscale and affluent, and it can be wonderfully upper middle class and incredibly affordable. So I think the diversity of the product that you offer and the experiences that you offer and the range of accommodations that you offer allow you to ride out that concern more than others. If you're the Dell in San Diego, or the Broadmoor in Colorado, or major luxury resorts that are heavily dependent on meetings as well, it may be a bit more challenging. But I think Hilton Head, again, has that amazing diversity to absorb and roll with tough times and present a product that's very comfortable and appealing, and a person feels welcomed and safe in.
Thank you for that answer, Renee.
Fall will be great. I think your fall is going to be, I think a lot of destination drive markets, fall and the holidays are going to be better than anyone's ever seen, just because the whole calendar year is a bit out of whack.
Like for you to comment on a word that's a phrase that's going around is about over tourism in a lot of cities across the world. And as far as over tourism and crowding on Hilton Head Island or in the state of South Carolina, if you could share some of your thoughts on that, Renee.
Okay, well, this might be a bit dicey, but as you mentioned in your intro, we do the public relations for Peru and New Orleans. So when I hear over tourism, it's the trampling with intended love of places like Machu Picchu, that's a World Heritage Site, that is overrun with tourism and is in danger of being visited to death. I'm not sure Hilton Head suffers from over tourism. It may have seasonal peaks, such as around the Heritage or July 4th or Memorial Day. And I know certain areas of the island, especially where the public beach access is, can seem to get incredibly crowded. But if I remember correctly, during a good year, your hotel occupancies were around 65, 75%. That's not necessarily over tourism. I think you kind of have seasonal highs and lows, but don't forget, and I can understand if you live there that it must be sometimes frustrating looking at all the visitors on specific days, but they're also feeding the coffers of your businesses, your county and your state. So I would say you really don't suffer from over tourism, but there may be a need to kind of try to spread out the tourism and you're the experts on this, not worry so much about the summer, but drive a lot more visitation to the fall and the early winter and even the early spring. I mean, you've got a lot of kid-free, child-free couples. You have a lot of girlfriend getaways. You have a lot of guy getaways. I mean, if you can spread that out more, that might level off the perception of over tourism, which seems to me to be in certain spots, not the entire island.
All right. Well, thank you for that. It's in our marketing plans and marketing efforts. It's certainly those plans are driving visitation here in the fall and the shoulder and off seasons, and certainly not pushing the summer season. Renee, I tell you, it's great to hear your voice, and we look forward to seeing you back on Hilton Head Island with your family very soon. And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Anytime. I'm always happy to contribute to the success of Hilton Head, and I'll be down there in 2.5 weeks. So I can't wait to gas up the pickup truck and haul as fast as I can down the eastern seaboard and to get back on the golf course and to the beach. So I'll give you a ring when I get there, Bill.
Please do. We look forward to having you. Thanks again, Renee.
All right. Thank you. You take care, everyone.
Thanks. We'll shift now to our report from DHEC, and back with us again today is Dr. Michael Katkin. Dr. Katkin.
Good morning. Thanks again for the opportunity to speak. So as of yesterday, we're reporting just under 2,000 new cases of COVID-19 in the past week, which brings the total number of people confirmed to have the disease in South Carolina to 12,415. This includes 56 new cases in the past week in Beaufort County for a total of 398 cases for the county. For the Hilton Head zip codes 29926 and 29928, 17 additional cases have been reported there in the past week for a total of 52. In the Bluffton zip codes of 29909 and 29910, 23 additional cases have been reported for a total of 118 cases there. Unfortunately, today we're also reporting 55 additional COVID-19 related deaths in the state in the past week. This brings the total number of people who have passed away from the virus to 501. 2 additional deaths were reported in Beaufort County individuals for a total of 14. So while we see a general increase in the number of cases reported daily, it's important to keep in mind also the general increase in testing. Projections indicate that as testing increases, the number of confirmed identified cases will rise to meet the true number of cases in the community and the state. It's important to look at the data as a whole to understand what is truly happening. We see multiple peaks and valleys with a daily report of case numbers that is provided. This is most likely a result of testing patterns, such as many offices that would normally collect these tests being closed on the weekends and the holidays. So we look at the data in multiple ways to smooth out some of these effects. This includes looking at the case numbers based on when the person's symptoms started, or looking at the cases reported by week. We have seen some occasional increases in the percentage of tests that are coming back positive per day. Although this could indicate a true increase in cases, it also could reflect a more targeted testing of high-risk groups. This includes some of the nursing home testing that's been done and some of the testing that has been done in areas identified as potential hotspots. So we look closely at some of the measures of severity based on information that's provided by hospitals. This includes the hospital beds used, the total hospital beds used, the ICU beds in particular, and the ventilators that are used. So we have not seen a significant increase in these numbers associated with the increase in the case numbers at this time. So it's a little bit difficult when you get all these different measures thrown at you. So the question comes down to how to use all this information. So our hope is that everyone will treat the increase in case numbers as a reminder to take the actions that can limit the spread of the virus. We keep repeating the same message because it's proven to work, and it's especially important as we move to more normal operations. So if you go out in public, ensure you maintain that 6 feet of social distancing with those around you. Make the choice to wear a cloth mask to help protect those around you as well. And if you run a business, make sure your policies allow patrons to practice the social distancing, such as limiting capacity and having markers that remind people who are lined up to maintain appropriate distance. So as always, for the latest updates on COVID-19, you can visit our website, scdhec.gov/COVID-19, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Katka. First question comes to us this morning from Chuck. And Chuck is asking, are these cumulative totals since the beginning of tracking back in March, or do those numbers represent current active cases, and specifically referring to the 52 on Hilton Head Island and the 118 in Bluffton?
The 52 is the total number of COVID-19 cases since we started testing.
Okay, thank you for that answer and clarification. Next question comes from Karen, and Karen is asking, when will assisted living facilities be off lockdown? Any idea on that, Dr. Katka?
I really can't speculate right now. Unfortunately, we'll just need to keep a watch on that, because we're going to have to kind of watch the data and make sure we have an appropriate approach to kind of protecting those, because that can be a very vulnerable group.
And the last question for you for Dr. Katka comes from Ben, and Ben is asking if all the patients in nursing homes have been tested in South Carolina.
Yeah, the testing has been done for all the nursing and extended care facilities.
Very good. Dr. Kaka, once again this week, thank you for the update. We appreciate that. And we look forward to talking to you again next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll transition now to the President and CEO of the South Carolina Bankers Association. And Fred Green, we're glad to have you back and back on the call this week.
Yep. Bill, good morning, and thanks for having me. Congratulations, too, on being recognized as the model community to restart after COVID. I've got a couple of quick updates, some very positive. Just as an update, real quick on PPP, the demand has fallen dramatically. There's still over $100 billion still available. That number is moving. The number of new loans issued are very slow going out. But let me shift to what's going on legislatively. The House passed a bill last Friday that was almost unanimous. There was only one dissenting vote that they passed to the Senate. There are two provisions in that bill that are, again, very beneficial to existing PPP borrowers and to new PPP borrowers. The first is the 8-week period would be extended to 24 weeks. The second is that 75-25% ratio, 75% payroll to 25% rent, mortgage interest, utilities, et cetera, would be moved to 60-40. Again, the two very important points here gets into when the businesses open back up. So the 8 weeks, the 75-25 as it exists today, starts the day that the loan was issued. Now, as businesses are opening back up, it extends that 8 weeks to 24. And of course, a higher percentage of the loan can be forgiven, is dedicated to mortgage interest and rent and things like that. So again, very positive. It's over in the Senate now. Senator McConnell said he expected it to be taken up this week. They have a companion bill that is similar. So let's keep our fingers crossed that the bill will be passed in the Senate, and by this time next week, the president would have signed it, which would again significantly improve the current rules. Let me jump to forgiveness. We mentioned that the forgiveness rules, not the forgiveness format, was issued about 2 weeks ago. Obviously, if this legislation passes, the calculations on those will dramatically change as well. So the improvements here will impact the forgiveness format and then ultimately the forgiveness rules. One other piece I'd like to share with your members is there are a number of trade organizations, to include the banking industry, a lot of others, a lot of chamber of commerces that are making a very passionate plea to members of Congress to change the forgiveness format. And I'm going to oversimplify it, but it's basically going from a very complicated type tax return to a Form EZ for loans at or below a certain amount. Two of our congressional delegations signed on to a letter last week that went to Treasury that suggested that amount should be $350,000. So said another way, the very complicated forgiveness form would be reduced to maybe a one-page form if Treasury would accept it. So all good news there, and just keep your fingers crossed that the legislation passes and the president signs it. So thank you, Bill, for having me, and be happy to answer any questions.
All right, Fred, thank you. I believe when we spoke last 2 weeks ago, there was 100 million plus still available for PPP, and I'm glad to hear that today that number is still over 100 million. So that's good news, and certainly a positive report from you. Let's ask William Furman, the Senior Area Manager for the SBA, for an update, then we'll have some questions for each of you. Good morning, William.
Good morning, Bill. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for inviting me again to participate in the call. This has really been, and this is a good thing in my mind, this has been a slow news week, if you will, with nothing really new coming out other than since we've had the application for forgiveness and the forgiveness interim rule that was issued. Again, that's been a couple of weeks ago. There is still, we're talking about levels of funding that are left, and there is still approximately 120 billion left in PPP funding availability. So there's ample funds available. As of May 30, we had done in South Carolina just under 59,000 loans, PPP loans, and that was for a total of 5.6 billion here in the state. As you mentioned, we do expect changes in the forgiveness requirements, and from SBA standpoint, we really can't comment on that until those changes come out. But I think we all acknowledge, even here in the agency, that all of these changes are much needed, and looking forward to seeing how that exactly shakes out. So just stay tuned to that. The PPP application window is still open, and it will be open until June 30. So if anybody is still on the fence about whether to apply, I encourage you to go ahead and take action and apply now, and don't wait until it's too late. Kind of interesting, I did actually, when we were on the call, and I got an email from a lender that has reported that they have their first request for PPP forgiveness. So we are kind of shifting modes, changing gears, getting ready to shift from the PPP loan making into PPP forgiveness. As far as economic injury disaster loans, not a lot has changed there. SBA is still continuing to work through the backlog of applications. The portal is still closed to all businesses with the exception of agricultural enterprises, and we have not received any information as to when that will be reopened for all small businesses. I'm getting a lot of calls from businesses that have been both approved for EIDL loans as well as businesses that have been declined for a variety of reasons. So if anyone has been declined, and if you'd like to discuss it, feel free to email me, william.furman@sba.gov, and I'll be happy to follow up with you. I don't have access to those disaster application systems, but I'll give you my best advice on what you should do if you've been declined and you want to proceed. So be happy to do that. And with that, I'll be glad to take any questions as well.
Great, thank you, William, for that update. And I'll get some questions here, and you and Fred can answer these. The first question is from Bill, and Bill is asking regarding PPP. Is there any guidance for how to treat commission salespeople whose earnings dropped way off when business closed? Can they be paid something based on last year's W-2 earnings?
William, I know you're going to have to answer that one, William.
Yeah. So that, commissions, well, let me back up just a little bit. One of the requirements is that individual employees' salaries shall not be reduced more than 25% without it affecting PPP forgiveness. As far as salaries go, I can certainly understand that, or commissions go, I can certainly understand how commissions may have fallen off, and then that would appear that an employee may have had their compensation reduced. That has not been addressed in any of the interim final rules that I have seen. But that is something, if you want to follow up with me, that is something that we need to make sure that SBA and Treasury is aware of. So those are the kind of situations that, when they make these rules, there's no way that they can fully understand what the impact is going to be. So if you don't mind, if whoever that is, if they will shoot me an email, we need to make sure that senior leadership and the folks that are working on these interim final rules are aware of that type of situation.
William, thank you. And what would be the email address to send that to?
It's william.furman, F-U-R-M-A-N, @sba.gov.
Great, thank you. Next question we have, if a company received PPP, can they apply again with the extension?
I'll jump in. I assume the question is related to the extended period from 8 weeks to 24. Again, that's legislation passed the House and the Senate, and we expect that period to be extended. The answer to the question is it covers a broader period of time. So therefore, I would say anybody who already has a PPP loan would qualify. The legislation makes it retroactive to the first PPP loan issued.
Okay, thank you, Fred. Next question from Karen. Since the PPP funds have not been used, will the deadline be extended past June 30th?
It's going to be up to the legislation until that changes, and hopefully it will change next week. But as of today, the answer is June 30th. Once we get the legislation passes, that date may change, very well may change.
Okay, thank you. And that's going to conclude our questions for William and for Fred today. Guys, thanks for joining us again, and we appreciate the updates and answering the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thanks, you too. And now we're going to transition to Steve Wilmot, and the RBC Heritage is returning to Hilton Head Island in less than 2 weeks. We're certainly excited about that, and like to hear from Steve on what's going on with the RBC Heritage.
Good morning, Bill, and thank you. Good morning, everybody. I truly appreciate, Bill, you and your team to continue to conduct these calls. They're most informative, and I thank all the speakers today. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this as well. I'd really like to congratulate and thank Steve Riley for his service to this community and commitment to all of us. It's been tremendous from a personal and a professional side, what he's done, and it's been an honor to be able to call him a great friend, and I wish him continued successes. But what I like to do too is I kind of like to actually just to show how great this community is and how blessed and fortunate I am and we are to be in this community, in this state. I like to just give a couple shout outs and thank you for kind of the behind the scenes things that are happening right now to get us prepared for 2 weeks from now, to be honest with you. Dwayne, again, thank you for all your efforts in holding my hand up there in Columbia through this process. And, I know how much effort you put in there to get Carrie up and running there at NASCAR, and Bob Moran the week after us with WTA, with Women's Tennis Association a week after us, but it's been great. And, but thank you. And then our new medical advisor too, I jokingly say that, but Jeremy Clark in the hospital has been unbelievable through this whole exercise of us, RBC Heritage 2.0. And he's been has assisted the tour through this process, has assisted myself and us through this process, and really appreciate it. And then actually USCB too, Dr. Panu. I mean, people don't realize today, right now, we have our volunteer uniform registration going on at the USCB Hilton Head campus. and we will be using the facility the week of the tournament for some other things too. So we really appreciate the USCB stepping up as well. And then an interesting thing as well is the Savannah Hilton Head Airport. They've been a great partner, a great friend of ours for many years, but we're currently working with them and the tour, and actually 2 737 United Charter airplanes that will be flying in Monday from Fort Worth. But they're going to accommodate them as chartered airplanes coming into Savannah Hilton Head Airport for the players and the caddies to come over here. So you can see it's been an incredible collective effort by so many, a team effort, as I talked about before, but it's also an honor to be in an incredible community, working with some great people throughout the state to be able to pull all this to get together. And we're excited about it. And just a few things that are happening right now is, and going back to the one thing that we've talked about before, the health and safety and well-being of all is the most important thing. And we continue, just like today, we're practicing social distancing with our volunteers, and we have a PPE program that will be in place during the tournament. All these players and caddies and officials, in addition to all the CBS people, will be tested once they're on site, and once they're cleared, they'll be thermal screened each and every day. So that's something that's is a new exercise for us, but maybe it's the new abnorm. But we are, with help from Jeremy Clark and others. The one thing I should say is the testing and thermal testing, or the thermal screening, will be all handled by third parties, so will not impact any of the local resources. And but that's all is underway in the planning phase. But TV towers are going up right now. We have one thing I'm happy to say as well is we will, without being able to name too much, you did see that Rory McIlroy, the #1 player in the world, did commit, but we will have one of, if not the strongest fields we've ever had. And it's a compliment to the tour believing in us, believing in being able to come to this community and this community to be able to pull this off. And Sea Pines has certainly been, in CSA here, with Sea Pines has been tremendous to work with as well. But one other thing is I'd like to just mention there'll be more information with regards to this as we move forward too. But we've created a social media influencer campaign that we're calling the Plaid Pledge. And we know how the COVID-19 virus has affected so many of us, but it more than any group has affected our doctors, nurses, and the healthcare providers. And we've created this in working with state and local politicians as well as PGA Tour professionals, and have asked them to join this Plaid Pledge. And it will be shared amongst South Carolina Hospital Association Foundation as well as the Heritage Classic Foundation for registered charity partners. And this is something we'll be unveiling, or will be part of the programming of the week of the event, working with RBC and our other partners as well. So stay tuned with that and additional information. And we certainly look forward to a great week. In a couple weeks, it will be different since no spectators, but the eyes of the world will be upon this community and Hilton Head Island, the state of South Carolina, which will be a win-win-win for all of us.
Thank you, Steve, and certainly appreciate hearing that update. And we're looking forward to welcoming the PGA Tour back to Hilton Head Island in just a couple weeks. For our listeners today, I want you to know that Steve has agreed to come back on again next week, and we're delighted to have him as always. And he'll be talking a little bit about what it's like to help bring back live golf and live sports back to the airways and coming from Hilton Head Island. And then we also thought it would be interesting to have Carrie Tharp, who's the president of the Darlington Raceway, which was the first real live television, no fans event. And so Carrie and Steve will be able to provide a couple updates on how they both have worked through those challenges. And then also we'll be delighted to welcome Jackie Gifford on next week as well. Jackie is the editor-in-chief of Travel and Leisure, and she'll be able to give us another broad-based tourism remarks. And so we're looking forward to each of them next week. But Steve, keep up the good work. Thank you to the Heritage Classic Foundation. And we look forward to another great week on Hilton Head Island with the PGA Tour. So that's going to conclude our call today. Again, be kind, take care of each other, and thank you for joining us today, and have a great rest of the week. Bye-bye.